Good morning, everyone. So I guess we can start now. Let me share my screen. Can anyone confirm if we are able to see my screen? Thank you so much. Yeah. So yes, yesterday we discussed about this opening of the different browsers, right? So if you see this Chrome, Firefox, and Edge, so we were able to even execute those scripts, right? So if you see Chrome, so Chrome we were able to execute successfully yesterday, but after this we also had written code to open Firefox and the Edge browser. So if you can see the other classes, so Firefox. So yesterday we were unable to execute this Firefox uh, due to some error. I'm not sure. Sometimes that error occurs, but it's the same thing. So again, I re-executed it, and then it got passed. So if I have to show you, so I'll execute this Firefox class. So it's the same code. There's nothing. So if you see this one, it is about to start this, and Firefox browser is opened. You can see, and then the code is executed. So what I did was, so it's the same thing. Yesterday we written code to open this Firefox driver, and then we have also set the property for Gecko driver and the path. So here what I've done is whatever path we were, like wherever we downloaded that zip, I've just extracted that zip file in the same location. So not sure what's happening under this project related specific folder. So but for now, if you can see, so Gecko driver. So if you see this one, this were the zip files that we downloaded right earlier, and then I extracted the zip file here. For Gecko driver is this, and for Edge is here. So after this, we get this file path. So same gecko driver.exe, and then we want ms edge driver.exe. So those two paths are there, right? So this paths, you have to get the path of it. Just right click on it, go to properties, and go to security. Here you would have object name, so you would have c's double slash all those things till .exe. So you want this path, and then come here and paste it here. Once, as soon as you paste it here, so that path, if it is correct, then if you execute, it would open that Chrome browser, Firefox browser. The same way, after opening that uh, Firefox browser, we wanted to maximize it. If it is maximized, that's fine, but even if you do, it doesn't harm anything to our script. And same way, then we are opening the URL in Firefox. So I would execute this script in Firefox browser and see. So it's the execution is going on. So opened, and then you see application has also launched in Firefox browser. So same way for Edge browser, if you open this, we have got the path, and then we want to maximize that and launch the URL. So right click, run Java application. See, it has launched Edge and that URL as well. That's it. So these are our code in different browsers. Uh, so today I'm going to show you how to basically locate an element, what locators are, and how we identify elements for our automation scripts. So let's say, so we will execute on Chrome browsers. So same code again, it would be executing on other browsers as well, as I said. So we would follow, we would use for our training as Chrome browser only, because it's most widely used. So here we have got this application. Now let's say we want to discuss about locators, right? So uh, locators, locators class. This one we have. So we have created a class here. So what locators are and why we need locators? So if you see what our test script, what we want to do is, after this opening, you want to enter username, enter password. So you want to kind of tell your automation script to go to a specific element, right, of a web page. So kind of address we need to give for that particular one. So whoever you uh, kind of point it, you would point by their names, or by some unique identifier with which that particular person or who whatever entity is, it would be identified. The same way in script as well, for identifying a particular element, we need the locator, the address of the properties or the address of that particular element. So how to find for any particular what we say, uh, locator of that element. So you would get an option called inspect element on that particular web page. So that option is provided by every browser. So here in Chrome, we just right click, and then we get this inspect option. So just click on that inspect option, and then here you would have a complete like backend code, whatever is written to design this UI page. So which is in the form of HTML, let's say. So this is nothing but DOM. So in this DOM, so you would have what, some tags, HTML tag, a head, body, and then some div tags. Something is written, so with which they have designed the script. The developers would do basically, and this one. Now, if you go through these things one by one, so you are under body, and then this div is highlighting. So click here, and if you see div id is app, class is some name they have given, and then inside this, if you open again, you would have something. This is layout blob. So if you see, just mouse over it, highlights, kind of highlights this one. So under this again, there are two divs, logo. So it's highlighting logo. If you see on the web page, see here, it is highlighting this one. And then this one is this section, complete section. And then inside this, you see, you would have different elements again. So different sections, different ways developers have uh, identified it. So return that code. So if you just go deep again, you would have, so here if you see for login, yeah, it is here, and then here h5 and div, so another div. So h5, if you see h5 tag login, so login is written, right? So that login is displayed here. If you see, h5 is nothing but header tag. So based on font again, so that text, that code is here. You have to come till this place, and then you would find that option here, and some class they have written, some other attributes. So for an element, okay, I'll show other things. So this is another div tag. So we want our username would be under this one, because it's highlighting. If you see here, right? So if I expand this one, so we get this section, highlighted section, and then we want the form. So that's basically the our username password is in the form tag. If you open this here, if you see input tag, name is this, div. Again, there is a div section which is pointing to the username thing. So here, if you see again, scroll down, like go deep, and then inside this, you would find I tag, and I tag is for label. If you see label here, if you see the tag for this particular is label, and then username. This username is here, and this I tag is this icon. If you see, this is icons, right? So I tag, if you see where it is taken from here, if you have something developer has written, and this I tag is to identify this one. So same way we have got username right now. So this is label, it is highlighting label, but we want our field to enter, right? That's basically, it would be a tag of input. Basically, if you are entering something, it would be tag input. If you see, we got input, and then we have different uh, properties of that. So tag, if you see this angular bracket, and then whatever you have is what, a tag. So here the tag is input, and then this class equals to some value, we don't care. So name equals to some value, placeholder equals to some value. So what are all these are nothing but the attributes of that element. So class is an attribute, name is an attribute, placeholder is an attribute. So likewise, so what is this oxd input, this thing, this is something, the value of the class. So what is this username? Username is the value of name attribute. So username again is the value of attribute called placeholder. So same way other things. So here, in that way, if you go, so this is something, some element, we don't know what it is, but the tag of this is input, the attribute name is name, and then value of that name attribute is token. So type is another what we call attribute, value is hidden. So value is again a value attribute, and then value of that value attribute is this something. So this is what HTML particular element it would be representing. So if you see other things like, let's say password. So instead of going it this way, so I just wanted to show you like how this HTML DOM would look like, and how we need to traverse it step by step. But basically we don't do that way, we just directly kind of use this inspect option. So if you see, select this and then highlight, mouse over on which element you want to identify on the web page. So if you see that all this here, if you see, so whenever I highlight mouse over something, so that related code element in the DOM is being shown. So if I have done on username, you see input, here you see input class is being shown, right? So this thing. And for password, if you want, just go here. So password label is this. If you want label, you just click select that label thing. But if you want the text box of that password field, go there and then click on it. As soon as you click on it, you would get that highlighted element here. So input, so tag for this is input, and different attributes are there. So we have type, name, placeholder, all these things for this password. And similar way for login, if you want to do, what the other way also you can do is just mouse over on the element which you want to do, right click and click on inspect. So as soon as you click on inspect, you would get that element as well, highlighted element here. So the tag name, what is the tag name of this login button here? Can someone confirm what the tag name is? What is the tag name of this login button? Since we have highlighted it, it's opening. What is the tag name? So I want you guys to understand this thing. Until and unless you understand how these elements are designed, how, what all things, what are all these things, so you won't be able to locate an element properly. So if you have any doubts, if you want to ask something, feel free to ask. I see there's no one who won't like kind of have understood or not. I'm not sure if they are clear or not. And since I'm asking what would be the tag of this element, is what no one is responding. So
Button.
I'm not sure if you're able to get it or not.
Button.
Right. So the tag of this thing is button. How can you see? Just angular bracket, whatever is being opened here, right? So tag is button, and then the attribute and value would be all this. So attribute is type, attribute is class, attribute is this data something. So equal to we have, then value. So value of that attributes. So these are the value of that attributes. And then if you see login, this is kind of the text of that button again, if you want to be precise more. So this way, now how to identify, as I said, so we have locators class, right? So here one thing is we can identify by first property that we would be using is let's say ID. So most preferred, and it's in particular order. So we have elements like locators in the Selenium is ID is one, next is name attribute, and then the next one would be class name, and with the tag name we can identify with CSS, And the before this, I'll say like link text, partial link text, and then CSS selector and XPath. So these are the properties with which we would be able to locate any particular, any given element. So uh, here, so what is like first one we said ID, right? So for any element which we are going to identify or inspect, so we would see if that particular element is having ID tag, ID attribute. So if you see, this is class attribute, we don't want that. This is name attribute, name is okay, but we are looking for ID. So this is placeholder and then that's it. So this element doesn't have ID attribute, and since this doesn't have that ID attribute, then if that particular element doesn't have ID, then we'll go on with the next ones with which we can identify. Next is name, right? So here if you see, we have name attribute. So and the value of that name attribute is username. So we can take that property name and the value would be username. So same way, class name tag, this I would say it later. Again, like if you have any other websites in mind, and we can kind of try to inspect and identify that element if someone wants, if they can say me, or some other websites, if more workshop. So here if you see email, I'll just right click, inspect. So you see here, tag is input for this, and then attribute and value, class is attribute, value is email, ID you see. So ID is there. So for this element, we can take ID and the value is email. You can take ID or name as well, but preferred would be ID. And then sometimes some elements would have kind of dynamic IDs as well. So here email is there, but every time if it is email, it is going to static, it is going to be static, then you can take that value because it is not going to change. But in some cases, some elements would have like some random this thing ID as this way. So if it is that way, next time when you load, if you see, you the ID would be email and then something else, some other number. It won't be constant, that value won't be constant, and so it can't be identified unique based on ID. So in that case, you shouldn't be taking ID, you should be going to some other attribute which is kind of name, or then even that name, if it is not there, then use the other attributes which are like CSS selector you can do, or XPath. So most preferred and the commonly used ones is XPath. For any of the element we can identify. So later I'll show you how to identify for any element using XPath. So for now, yeah, ID, if it is this dynamic thing, we shouldn't be preferring, we should go to name, and then name as well. If it is dynamic, go to the other properties with which we can identify. So we have this thing, and what else, like to inspect here, if you see, we have got input, text is this, and ID is, we have got ID for this, and small search terms. So small search terms, again, it won't be having the same ID, won't be having for other elements. We can kind of say that based on our experience, or kind of also you can just copy this thing, whole thing, and see if some other might uses that. So if you see, I've pasted here Control F, and then I've pasted here Control V. So if you see, we have got 3 matches with this particular thing. So one is this thing, the next is some function. So that text is used, but ID equals to with this value, there is nothing such. So we can even basically try to use this ID, and at first instance, if you see, it is not random, or kind of doesn't change. So we can take that value and then execute it in our script and see if it's passing, then that's fine. If it is not passing, and then in that case we would be changing that locator in that case. So here we can prefer id and then value as well. So you see name q, so name q is there. So that I would show in XPath how to uniquely make sure we are taking that unique thing only. So we have name as well and value attribute. So value is search snow. So this way, I hope this identification locators is kind of clear. ID, name for now, and then class name and tag name. So if I have to say that, so here class is what? Button one. So we have this complete name, but we generally don't kind of prefer using this class name and tag name for identifying a single locator. So if we want to uh, identify, let's say if you want to identify multiple elements on a web page, saying okay, here you see or class name and tag name, right? So this one will relate it. So let's say tag. So tag is nothing but a tag we know, right, already. So here if you see anchor tag, so for this thing tag is a. Link, for links the tag would be a, and then the value or the text of this is what here, inner text, inner html or inner text we say. So this is register. So for this anchor tag is a and register. So other things are, these are also links. Wherever you see these things bit links, and then how you identify that links, so the tag would be uh, so the tag for that particular element would be a anchor tag, and then values here if you see. So these are the tags. And now let's say on the web page we want to identify uh, so here for this thing I'll show how to write first. So how to use that id. So we know id, just right click, inspect. It doesn't show, so right click again, inspect, and then you would have this attribute. So here we can take name, right? So name attribute and the value is this. Same way there was id, so id also we can take. For now I'll take name, and then where is the class? So here itself, let's say I want to do, so I want to open Chrome browser, and then let's say I want this steps. So what are we doing here? Again I want to set, I have to set because it would throw error. So we have written code to open Chrome browser and then maximize, and then loaded that URL. And after that, we want to identify username. So how to identify that username? We have seen the property would be attribute is name and value is username. So how to find generally an element? So driver dot this Selenium would give us some methods, which is here if you see, and then out of this all methods we have a method called find element and find elements. There are two methods, so that is coming from Selenium. And then find element is what? It just find one element. Find elements, it finds multiple elements, more than one element. If you want to find, then we use find elements, and the return type for that find elements is list of web element. But for find element, it is just web element, right? So so just we want to identify only one element, we'll use find element, driver dot find element. And then here by is another class by dot. When you see different methods, again we would how to identify find element by what? By class name, by css selector, by id, link text, name, partial link text, all things whatever I've said here. So we have those things. So here we are identifying, let's say for id, if we can take id, and then give that id value here, whatever the id of the element which you want to identify here. So that value you want to give. So with this particular line of code, you would be able to identify uh, the element based on id. So here value of that value of the element, id element, whatever it is. Okay. So this one statement, this would give us with id we are trying to find element, and the value of that id would be inside this double quote. So for our this thing we don't have id, but here if you see, if you have inspected this one, you have got id, right? So id is this, I'll just refresh since I have written that dynamically. So right click, inspect, id is email. So in this case we can use email, driver dot find element by dot this thing and then email, like this. So this is using id, right? Using id if you want to identify. Next thing, uh, using other attribute name if you want to identify. Let's say driver dot find element, then inside this by is another class, by dot you want to identify using name, and name in double quotes. Since it's string, we need to give the value in double quotes. And what value you want to give for name? Here for this element we have got name attribute and the value is username. Copy this thing username from here and then paste it here. So we have identified that property using uh, name attribute, right? So by using name property we are identifying this element. Okay. Next thing, uh, so id we have done, name we have done. It's in a class name and tag name. So as I said, class name and tag name, if you are trying to identify any of the element, let's say uh, so this class name I would show you later when we do XPath. So you would get better understanding. For now, other things are link text, partial link text. We have all these things. So here, if you see this one, let's say this element. Now here, register link. You know, it's a link, right? General terms as well. So register link, if you want to identify, you would have anchor tag A, and then you have some attribute and the value, attribute and value, and then this is what text of that element. So we know text is register here. For this, text would be login, text would be shopping cart, but just to verify, mouse over, select that thing, click, and then here you would get that. So just let's see some other link. Yeah, this thing if you see. So this element, it is again links, hyperlinks, called A as an tag name, and then value, the text of that element is search. So same way here my account, so it would be a tag, and then value text is my account. Same way this thing. So for any link text the tag would be a. So in that case how to identify? Say driver dot find element by dot link text, you would get this option, and then in link text in double quotes the value of that link text. So what is the text value of that link? So here let's say I want to identify register, so inspect this and then take this value, copy. So better to copy and paste instead of you writing, because sometimes developer might write spaces here, multiple spaces they might give, or they might do something but show something that way as well. So we need to identify, write it properly, like as it is, whatever uh, the value of that attribute is. So here for link text it is as it is, I've just copy pasted, that's it. So this is using link text. And partial link text is nothing but again if we have partially the text of that particular link. So here shopping cart, no shopping cart, I would say, okay, account, my account or something. So here we have my account, right? So this partially, if I want to identify, I can say uh, driver dot find element by dot partial link text, we have that, and then partially text of that link we can pass. So here we can say account, 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 right? So account here, if I give, so it might identify this account, or again if there is instead of my account, your account is what one more link is there, so it tries to get even identify that one. So we would get multiple, we can get multiple elements, and then uh, with that partial link text you won't be properly able to identify a particular element. So that's why we kind of doesn't prefer this using. But yeah, you can also, like, in case you are sure that you would get only one particular element on that particular web page, then yeah, you can use this partial link text as well instead of for the complete link text. So partial link text is the other one, and then what else? The partial link text we are done, then XPath, CSS, and then this tag names as well. So let's say tag name, yeah, I show with the tag names. Let's say I would come to this particular page. We are navigating here, and then driver dot find element by dot tag name, and then here, so tag name is what, in double quotes, which tag name you want to identify. So on this page, let's say I want to find elements with tag name called links, anchor tag A. So that thing I can give it here, and then find elements, it would return us this tag name. With tag name there won't be a single element, right? We are expecting more than one, multiple elements. So that's why the method name here would be find elements, and then tag name, and then with all those elements you just want to see how many, so count you want to see, let's say. So dot, if you see, you would get some method called size. So this method would give us what it finds on this particular page with tag name called A, and how many elements are there, it would return us that size. So we will store this in uh, all links variable, I would say this variable, and then I just want to print it, all links equals to this one. And now if I execute, you see, it should give us the elements, like number count of all that links on this page, and then it's executed. So you see all links is 62. So there are kind of all all these elements, these things, and this might be there, and then this all in this complete page there are almost with that particular tag name there are 62 elements, it says. So it is identifying with this thing. So this is how we can use this. And so yeah, now we'll go on with the CSS selector and next part. Yeah, before this, does anyone have any doubts in this, or is it clear? Please confirm if it is clear as well. Clear. Thanks for confirming. So yeah, then we have now XPath and CSS selector. So first thing, CSS selector, if you want to say, So yeah, so here to find, so you just inspect a page and then to write any XPath or something, we kind of can click Control F and then you would get this search field here. And here you can write your CSS selector or XPath here. So how to do? So let's say this username field you can identify with username, right? Let's say there is no name property in this case, and no other unique elements for their attribute and value with all the available things like ID, name, class name, this all properties you were unable to find. Then in that case, we go to CSS, either CSS selector or XPath. So let's say we are going on with CSS. So how to write a CSS syntax for that? So would be uh, so for I'll write for this thing because we have here if you see ID is email and tag name is input. So what we can do is Control F. So I would say the ID we have, right? So copy this ID, and then for CSS selector we just say uh, hash. Hash is what for ID. So it would try to find uh, any of these elements on this web page, complete web page with this hash. It says ID as email. So this way, this is CSS selector. So for email field, if you want to identify using CSS selector, we can use this syntax. Uh, Using CSS selectors, how to identify driver dot find element by dot CSS selector. We have this, right? So CSS selector and then value of that CSS selector. So in double quotes, we can give that value. Then this element dot, when you say you can do anything. So in that field you want to enter, right? So when you want to enter something, we have a method called send keys. If you want to click that element, dot click is the method. If you want to clear, we have clear method. So dot, when you say what all you can do with this element is whatever default methods that it gives, we can do that. So find element, find elements, and then get size, get tag name. So for this element, if you want to get the tag name, what the tag name would be for this element, CSS selector, whatever we have identified, we can get that tag name as well. Get text. So if you see get text of that element, if you want to do, we can do that. Is displayed, is enabled, selector. So we have different methods. Generally for email field, we would be clicking, we would be entering some value, right? So we use send keys here, and send keys in double quotes, what value you want to pass, that value you can send it here. That's it, and with semicolon. So this is the statement. With this particular statement, if you execute, you would you have basically identified this element using CSS selector, and we had ID for that. That's why we have used that and then done this. So execute, you would get that code. Same way, uh, yeah. So we have ID, right? Now next thing is, let's say we want to identify that with the class. So class, if you want to identify, instead of hash, you would say dot, and then dot. So if you see value is email, E is small. That's why here instead of capital E, give small e, then you see it is highlighted. And how many elements are being shown with this property? Here if you see one of one. So one of one, which means unique. There's only one element with this property. Then only we need to take this unique property. If there are one of 100, then if you give that property, then Selenium would say, okay, out of there are 100 elements with the property that you are asking me to find. Then in out of that 100, which one do you want me to use click or send keys or do whatever action you want me to do. So out of that 100, which one are you pointing to is what Selenium would ask us again. So it would throw an error saying there are multiple elements. Just in that cases, we just have to avoid giving ununique element identifiers. So only thing is give unique identifiers for any of these elements. So here uh, we would give so if we get 1 of 1, then in that case we can use this property here. So one statement would be this, and then the next. So this with ID we have done this with again CSS selector would be there, but value would be dot email. Dot in the sense class, it is referring to class, and then email is what value of that class. Value of that class is this. That way. Then this is done. Email. So this one using ID, and this was with class. And then other thing also how we can identify uh, just uh, attribute value as well you can give. Here let's say we have name as attribute and value is email. So this way also you can give. So what are you doing here? Just the square brackets, and then so here if I have to show you here this name using ID. How to identify? We have to write hash, and then syntax would be value of that ID. Value of ID. So this is so using ID. If you want to identify using CSS selector, we use this way. So hash and the value of ID. Value of ID is email here. So for class, it would be instead of dot, it would be hash. It would be dot. So this is using class. Value of whatever attribute now. This is class, right? So value of class, and value of class here is email, right? Now next thing we can identify also using so this way angular brackets attribute equals value, simple way. So using attribute and value you can identify. So how would you identify uh, this square brackets you have given, and then attribute I have taken. We have many attributes here. I have taken name as attribute. So name, and the value of that attribute is email. So I've not added any quotes, double quotes, single quotes anywhere. So this is simple plain. For CSS selector we can use this way using attribute and value. Other would be with uh, tag name as well. So here you know tag is input. So input dot email if I say, you see. So what are we doing? Tag name, and then dot, this thing is nothing but uh, dot, this thing is nothing but the value of that class, right? So tag name and then dot class name. That way as well we can use. So using tag name and dot class class value, tag name dot class. And other thing would be tag name hash ID. So with tag name also you can refer tag name dot ID. This we also do. So instead of this input ID is what email, right? So this dot I would remove hash email. You see 1 of 1. So using CSS selector, we can identify this element as well. And what else? So these are using different, again, I would say CSS selectors. We have identified using ID, name, uh, so class name, again, just like tag name we did, class name also we can do it. So we generally don't use those things much, but ID, name, and here we are able to identify using CSS selector. So XPath, I guess I would uh, explain that you later, but today it would be like kind of too much again. And that XPath is bit what we would be focusing more on, because in real time when you actually work in any of the companies, and then when you're testing an application, so you won't be having such simple and easy properties for any of that element. So you won't be able to for all that elements you won't have ID, name in general scenario. So in that cases we need to be mastered in XPath, writing XPaths basically. So CSS also it's okay, but again CSS depends on ID and class name, right? And this ID is class name, if it doesn't have, even the CSS won't help us. So in that case we would left with an option called XPath. So XPath, how to write XPath, what are the types of XPath, and all those things I would tell you tomorrow. So once we do that, then whatever our scenario is, so I hope easily you guys can identify any of the elements, not only this website. So if you just have any other websites in mind, and then you want to uh, identify any of that locators or elements. So let's say Google page, and then here this sign in button, if you just want to click. So just right click, inspect. So you see tag for this is A, and the value is sign in. So you can give this identify this element, driver dot find element by dot link text. Link text is sign in. You can give this way. And the search box, if you want to identify, inspect, right click, and then tag name is input. All there are some properties out of this. See if you can take title as an attribute. So this using XPath you need to take, but generally you have ID or name. So you have name property here, name as q. So see you driver dot find element by dot name, and then inside double quotes you can give value as q, and see if it identifies this. Dot send keys, you do navigate to this URL and then do that. So that way you can find element. And what else? So any other elements? So this Gmail, if you want to click, right click, inspect, and then you would have anchor tag Gmail. So you can use other properties. This in XPath I would show you how to use other things if it is not identifying. And then yeah, similar way like any other website, demo website for testing. We have this some websites again. Yeah, any of these websites again. Now if you want to identify, so let's say home you want to identify, right click on this, inspect. You see link, it is a link text, home. So you can text by dot link text, and then this same way with any of the element, if you just want you can identify it. So I hope this thing is clear. Can someone confirm if we are good with what I've said till now? How to identify element and different websites. So later in, yeah, in next class, if you have any doubts, we can even uh, uh, clear those things. We'll just if you have any websites that you want me to find element, inspect it, and then any element you find difficult finding those things. So if you can, uh, so you can do it. So I guess, yeah, if no one has any doubts, then we are good to close our session. Thank you, Soumya, for your. Is there another process for finding CSS selector? So we have found CSS selectors by tag name. What are the other things? So here by ID. So ID and class is only two, and then these things with tag name we can include, and that's thing. So CSS is that only, Soumya, only this these things. Yeah. Any other questions? Thanks, Soumya, for confirming. If you don't have any other questions, then we are good to close. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.